Welcome back, Novello Nation, to another episode of the Aaron Novello podcast. I have with me a truly rock star of a human being. He is a ex-Marine. He is retired law enforcement. He currently owns a CrossFit gym and is an Airbnb mogul, Mr. Fernando David. It's so awesome to have you with me, brother. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to be here with me today.
It's my pleasure, my pleasure. I still remember the first time I met you. Did I tell you? I know I told you the story. When I first met you and your wife, you were a brand new agent. You guys were just starting out. And I remember coming home and telling my wife, I just met a rock star. This guy is going places. This was years ago. I mean, shit, I think it's been, 10 years?
13, man.
13 years, yeah. I'm like, to this day, I remember coming home and saying, dude, I just met this guy that I think is going to be a superstar. And here we are, 13 years later. You're exactly what I predicted when I met you.
That's awesome, brother. I appreciate your kind words. It means a ton coming from you. And for those listening, I actually met Fernando while training for a triathlon with Team in Training, and he was the lead trainer. And I remember your workouts, brother, were super difficult, but I'm also aware that they very much so prepared me mentally and physically to, kind of deal with other challenges in life as time progresses, just in life in general and in business. So I really do my best to bring people to the platform that I think can really add value. And I think you can add value in multiple ways. And one of the ways is this idea of kind of thinking from a financial perspective, because I know you were kind enough to share with me in a call previously that we were having that your kind of intention in the past was really focused in a different area. It wasn't kind of entrepreneurial, right, in nature. It wasn't looking about cash flow and passive income and things of that nature. It was more so focused on like pension and putting in time and things of that nature. So if you could talk a little bit to the audience about that kind of journey and evolution for you.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I grew up in the 70s, right? And back in the 70s, it was, go to school, get a 9-to-5, work for 30 years, and you get rewarded with a pension, right? That was what I grew up with. And I grew up in Puerto Rico, so it was very difficult in Puerto Rico to find a good job, very difficult to do. So my out, because again, my grades weren't that great, going to college, my family didn't have money to send me to college, but my out was the military, right? And I bought into the program. Hey, do 20 years, and after 20 years, you're going to get a pension. You're going to be young, you can do whatever you want. And the moment I heard pension, I'm like, I'm in. Joined the Marine Corps, and I was off and running, right? Left the island and never went back. But when I was there, one of the things that changed my perspective, or what the reason why I didn't stay in, well, two things while I was there. The Marine Corps did one thing very good that helped me out tremendously. The Marine Corps made every young Marine take a financial class. Back then, if you're probably 30 years or younger, you're not going to relate to this story, but back then, you used to write checks for everything, right? You have to physically write a check. Well, young Marines didn't even know how to write a check. And a lot of them were getting in trouble and getting court-martialed for bouncing checks, right? And it was a serious problem. So the Marine Corps decided everyone has to go to a financial class. And I remember taking this class, and I was in a room of a bunch of young Marines, and the person teaching it he was about to retire as a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. And he told us two very important things that stuck to me forever. He goes, hey, if you guys, no matter what you do, whether you stay in the Marine Corps or whether you leave and go into the real world, is you need to invest in the stock market and buy real estate. Those are two things he said. He goes, if you do that, you guys are young enough now that by the time you're in your 60s, you can retire and you'll be financially well. I bought into that. I said, all right, perfect. What do I have to do? And the Marine Corps had a program called the Deferred Compensation Program, where you put in 10% of your money and they'll invest it in went up, whatever, the stock market. Never paid too much attention to that. But fast forward, I ended up leaving the Marine Corps because my wife had a son. And during those 4 years, I was traveling so much that I said, listen, because I was always getting deployed. If you're in the military, it's really not for families, because as a member, you're always getting deployed, you're leaving. So when my son was born, I sat down with my wife and I reflected on what I wanted to do going forward. And one of the things that I realized is, I wanted to be a father, because we had a hard time having a baby. My wife was pregnant 6 times before my son was actually born, right? So when he was born, for me, that was a huge blessing. At least we got one, right? And I used to tell my wife, my son he has to be something special, because he's the only one that survived. Every other one died, right? I laugh at it now, but it was rough on my wife more than me. But anyways, I said I wanted to be a father. So I couldn't stay in the Marine Corps and be a father, because there was no way, right? So what most Marines do when they get out, they look for another place with a pension, right? And they look at a career that's similar to the military. And for me, that was law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So I left, joined the police department, and that's where I retired from. But during that process, right, my goal was I never thought about being a business person. Entrepreneurship didn't exist. That word wasn't even popular back in the day as it is now, right? But I followed that program that I learned in that class that day, buying real estate and investing in the stock market, right? Those are 2 things that I did. It was 16 years into my career. I had 4 years left to retire. Oh, I'm sorry, 5 years left, because it was 15 years into my career in law enforcement. I looked at my portfolio, looked at the numbers, right? At the time, I had a couple of properties. And now I was putting in, because I did 4 years in the Marine Corps, so 19 years into the first program, right? And I looked at it and I went, something's wrong here, right? My properties were worth a lot. I had more equity and more money in my properties, like 3 times more than I did in my deferred comp. And my properties, money wasn't coming out of my pocket. My renters were paying for my stuff, right? Nothing came out of my pocket. My renters paid for everything. Yet I was putting, and at this time, I'm putting 18% of my salary into this deferred comp. And I'm like, what the heck, man? It's good to have, right? And everybody says you should have it. But I'm like, had I taken all that money and bought more properties, I'd be in a much better financial position. So I decided, hey, I'm going to double down on real estate, because that's what's working for me. And I'll keep this portfolio, because I can't touch it till I'm 59, right? So I'll keep this money here, but I'm really not going to focus on that as a lot of people tend to do, because I think that's a trap. It's not real. It's not real, people. You can't touch it. You can't pull it out. If you do, you're going to lose 10, 15%. I mean, I don't want to get into a huge debate on whether, being in a 401k is good or not. But I'll just say this. Had I not done that and invested more in real estate, I'll be much better financially than I am today.
Yeah, which is not too bad today. And
No,
what I'm aware of, and this is cool, and I appreciate all of that, right? Because I had a very similar awareness, following very traditional kind of sacred cows, if you will, right? Like, buy a house, pay it off, put money in a retirement plan, like that sort of thing. And you were following that track. And I remember one of my mentors, he said something to me that physically made me sit down. I had to sit down, because he was like, what? And he said, having all your money trapped in a house and in a retirement plan is another form of poverty. And when he said that, I was like, what? Like that, it was just so counter to everything that I'd been taught or believed until that point. And I had to sit down and think about it, because you just mentioned it. I can't take my wife out to eat with my equity in my house. I can't pay for my kids' private school with it, right? I can't, take a nice trip. And I also, if I want to touch that money, I mean, there's a penalty as far as the equities are concerned. So there's no freedom in that. And it sounds like you recognize that, right? Now, I'm sure, I mean, it's still cool you have those 2 pensions, and those aren't necessarily a bad thing. At the same time, the world and the kind of things that you were taught at that time, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, is not the world and the environment that we live in today. So you recognize that and you said, okay, cool. And then you pivoted. Okay. So I'm wondering for you, like, what was it about, like, why Airbnb? Because I know there's all these different, like, kind of types of real estate that people can be involved in or invest in, whether it's residential, single family residential homes, multifamily, Airbnb, industrial. Like, what was it about short-term rentals that you were like, aha, I have the vehicle?
Well, again, this is another situation in which I fell into it by accident, right? I had one property that I personally wanted to use. I'm like, listen, this would be cool. You know, family comes, it's got a pool near the beach. I'm like, I want to use this property, but like anything else, I need to make money. I can't just let it sit. I need to make money. So that's where the Airbnb came into play. I said, when we're not using it, or when my family doesn't come down and stay with us, we'll Airbnb it. So we did. The very first month, I made more money in that property than I did in any of my other rentals. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Okay, maybe it was just a fluke, right? Let's see what happens the next month. But then within that time period, the next month was fully booked. We were 4 months out and I was already booked, and I'm a numbers guy, so I'm already counting my, even though it wasn't in yet, like, holy smokes, man, look how much money we're making, right? It was 3 times more than I would have made had I long-term rented that property. The other thing I found out by accident was that, shoot, I'm looking at my property every day. My cleaners are going in. They're telling me if there's anything wrong, and if there's any minor issue, we fix it right away. And on my long-term properties, every time I had a tenant leave, it was costing me an average of $10,000 to get it back up rental ready, right? So I'm like, whoa, wait a second, time out, right? That's a big number, right? And on my Airbnb side, I eliminated that because my guys are in there every day looking at it, and we don't let small problems become big problems, which is what happens in long-term rentals. Your sink starts to leak, your tenant knows it, does nothing about it, and then 6 months later you go and your cabinets underneath your sink are rotten because they're letting the water damage. So, same thing with AC. They don't maintain the AC. And you get a phone call, hey, the AC froze and it's out because I never cleaned or changed the filters or cleaned the water lines, right? So those little headaches that you have as a long-term tenant, you don't have in the short-term world. So that's how I stumbled upon it. And I only have one duplex that it's a long-term, it's still long-term, but only because I have family members in it.
Yeah. That's the only reason. Otherwise, it would be Airbnb for sure. So I wrote down 2 things that you became aware of. One is obviously the cash flow numbers jumped out, and you're like, holy smokes, this is like a 3x on the revenue. But then also 2, which I think is very interesting, is that you notice there's actually less wear and tear on the short term than there is on long term. And even though that's a little counterintuitive because people are in and out of it all the time, you as the operator are able to get people in and fix problems right away.
Correct. And not only that, this is what a long-term tenant is going to live in the property. A vacation rental person is most likely only going to sleep in the property. They don't come to Florida to stay in the house. They come to Florida to go to the beach, right? They come to Florida to go hang out in nightclubs. They're not in the property. They go there just to sleep.
That's so interesting you say that. I love that distinction because, like, yeah, and they're probably like, getting, they're probably ordering food or going out to they're not even using like any of the facilities, right? They're just going there to sleep.
Yep.
So it's just got to look pretty and nice and clean.
Yep.
That makes total sense to me. Okay, so you had this epiphany. You're like, wow, this is interesting, right? It was kind of serendipitous. You did it for yourself personally, but then you noticed like, whoa, the numbers make sense and there's deferred maintenance and it makes more sense than my long-term rentals did. So then what was that kind of transition for you where you began to shift away from kind of the long-term and put more of your time and energy and effort into the Airbnb short-term rentals?
So it was obviously gradual because I had to wait for the long-term leases to expire. But as soon as they expired, they were gone. We fixed the properties, we furnished them, and we just made them short-term rentals. That was a shift, and that was a godsend. And here's the interesting part too. In the very beginning, when we first started, only Fort Lauderdale and Pompano, Fort Lauderdale and Lauderdale by the Sea had any type of regulations on vacation rentals.
Really?
So, yep. So my plantation properties, my Davie properties, Hollywood, none of them had any regulations so it's very easy to do back then. And even though with the regulations and some of the fees you have to pay, it's still very minute. It's not like it's super expensive or super hard to maintain the regulations. But the process was extremely easy back when I first started because there was no regulation, right? And it was just you want to rent your room out, you want to rent your house out, just put it on Airbnb and you're done.
Yeah, well, that makes total sense to me. So at the beginning, right, because nothing breeds competition or regulation like profits.
Right.
At the beginning, it was like, it's like the Wild West. Like there's not too many people, they're not regulating it, like boom. So it was easy to kind of grow. Now I'm imagining, my hallucination is that has changed now.
Yeah.
There's much more regulation, and you're an expert in all of that and making sure that people cross the T's and dot the I's.
Correct.
And I guess I'm curious because, you would know this better than most. That particular vehicle, those short-term rentals, I mean, they are subject to, you hear stories about certain governments in certain geographic areas being like, nope, can't do it anymore or whatever, right? So like, how do you mitigate that risk? Because I think that's really important, is to basically hedge against if for some reason things change.
Yeah, so for me, and I tell this, I mention this a lot because a lot of people make this mistake, and it's a huge mistake they make, right? A lot of people, especially in the last couple of years, realize, man, I can make money just about on any property on short-term rentals because the profits are just that big. So they'll buy anything and they'll buy it retail, not realizing that if government regulation changes and you can't rent that anymore as a short-term, then you're screwed, right? So the way I hedge against that is that I make sure the property cash flows as a long-term rental. If it doesn't,
from day one,
if it does not cash flow as a long-term rental, I don't touch the property. So that's how I hedge against that because I've seen it time and time again and two reasons. Another thing is this. A lot of people will buy it, right? They think it's so easy to manage and they'll do it themselves. And then they'll realize, it's not that easy. I don't want to do it. So now you're stuck because you can't go long-term. So now you have to sell the property. And people that realize, or people that come across with that problem, they realize it very quickly. They don't want to do it. And you can't sell because you bought retail. So you're not going to make any money on it if you sell. The way you hedge against it is just to make sure that the numbers work as a long-term rental. And if they work as a long-term rental, they'll definitely work in the short-term realm.
It's interesting. So by being disciplined in that approach, it basically not only serves as a hedge, but it also almost in a way, based on what you're sharing, like guarantees that it's going to be profitable as an Airbnb.
Correct. Guarantees it. Guarantees it, right.
Makes total sense to me. So, and you brought up something because I'm aware that that's a common mistake, right? That you're saying that people don't really do the numbers to make sure it cash flows as a long-term rental, just in case, because there is some component of that we, they can't control. For some reason, governments change their mind. Okay. What are some other like major, maybe one or two, like major mistakes that people make in getting into the short-term rental space?
One big one is they don't calculate when they're doing their numbers. Some people will do numbers, right? When they're doing their numbers, they don't calculate the initial expense, right? When you do a short-term rental, unlike a long-term rental, you have to furnish that thing, right? People don't calculate and realize how much it costs to furnish an entire house because you have to get it ready for a guest, just like if that guest was moving into it, right? The cups, the forks, the silverware, the beds, the sheets, the towels, all that stuff. They don't calculate those into their numbers. So yeah, the cash flow will work, but their initial ROI and the cost of getting into the unit shrinks, right? So that's a big mistake that people make. The other very, very big mistake that I see people make is this, is that they think I'm going to buy a $800,000 house in Rio Vista, right, with a pool, and expect that house to be profitable, right? It's been my experience, just like, and I'll put it in some simpler terms, right? Can that property be profitable? Yes, it can, but it's going to require a lot more expertise in managing that property so you can make some money. Reason being is because you're going to shrink your pool of potential guests, right? Just like in real estate, right? If I have a house that's worth $350,000 and I put that house on the market, I'm going to have a large pool of potential buyers versus a $2.2 million house. I put that on the market, my pool of buyers go this small, right? So with that in mind is why I say people make a lot of mistakes by thinking I have to go super big, super luxurious in order for me to be profitable in Airbnb. And it's the opposite.
It's the opposite, because I know we had this, so it's cool. I wrote down two things. One major mistake is they don't think about the CapEx,
right,
to kind of get it up and going, because you might have to spend 30 grand with like redoing stuff, renovating, with buying furniture, whatever. So that first year, your cash flow might be, the cash on cash return might be a little bit less, but then as time progresses, you make up for that. And then the second is imagining that it needs to be super nice and super luxurious in like a tip-top A+ location, where in fact, in your professional experience managing, I think you're almost at like 100 units, right? 100 doors that either you have a management division, which we'll talk about for a moment, where you can do this for people that you guys manage. That it's actually the opposite, that the properties that don't have to be like super nice location, great. I mean, sure, not like in terrible locations, but they don't have to be super luxurious. They're actually more profitable than the ones that are super luxurious.
Correct. Much more profitable.
That is so interesting, right? And I can see how that would be a common mistake that people make mentally. So
I made that mistake, right? I personally made that mistake. I had a property in Rio Vista. That's how I learned that, oh man, I made a mistake, right? Because that's one of the things that one of the things that I'll say about me. I'm very I tend to be extremely aggressive, right? And I don't mind making mistakes, because I believe that's when you truly learn.
Yeah, and your tolerance for risk is pretty high.
Yeah.
And everything that you've done, from military, law enforcement, like you're the one going in the door, like let's rock and roll. So your tolerance is like really high for risk, right?
Yeah, very high. And I don't, and it's not that I don't do it without making a calculated decision, because I do
think about it, but you're like,
Yeah, but like my wife tells me all the time, and this is where why my wife and I balance each other out, the yin and yang, I'm very optimistic, overly optimistic, right? I tend to look at something and I don't see what's wrong with it. I see the good that's in it, right? I'm like, oh, I can do this, I can do it. Prime example is the property I live in now. Well, I live on 3 acres in Davie. We bought it at a deal because the property when we bought it was horrible. We walked into the property, walked into the gates, electronic gate. I'll never forget this thing. You walk in, and all my wife saw was all the work that needed to be done, right? Oh my God, damn it, it was bad. I won't go into it, but the property was in horrible shape. That's what she was looking at. I was looking at, oh shit, when I fix it, it's gonna look like this. Right? I make money out of my property. If we don't have to touch into it, but I'm a firm believer that if a property doesn't put money in your pocket, then it's not a liability. So when I bought this property, I knew that it was going to put a lot of money in my pocket, right? So I looked at the property, I'm like, shit, it's going to look like this. I'm going to make this much money. My wife was thinking the opposite. She turned around and left out the door. I'm like, whoa, where are you going?
Where are you going, right?
And so I tend to look at stuff that way. If I can make it work, I will do everything I can to make it work. Now, do I make mistakes? Am I wrong sometimes? Yes. I bought a property in Port Charlotte that I lost money on, right? Just like any other investor. Nothing's 100%. But I try, I'm one of those people that I will find a solution. You know, it's like the old saying in Jamaica, they don't see stuff as problems. It's, what's the solution, right? What's that? I forget the saying, because I remember one time I said, oh, that might be a problem. No, man. Nothing's a problem,
Yeah.
So that's how I look at stuff, but go ahead.
That's awesome. And then, so you figured this out. I feel like you figured out the formula to make a cake on short-term rentals. And then you built this team to really manage the ones that you own, right? And then you realize like, oh, like I can manage this for other people. So talk a little bit about that side of what you do, how if somebody was interested in getting into the Airbnb game, but like they personally don't want to create, a whole system and a process, that you have one in place and that, you can oversee that for them. So talk about that a little bit.
Here's okay. So we'll start from the beginning. When I started doing Airbnbs, I was a one-man show, right? I did from the get-go. I did create a team of cleaners to clean the properties. At the time, it was easy because I only had. We started with one, then we had two, so we only had 3 or 4. So it was easy getting cleaners. And like a lot of people when they start off, I used family, right? I got my nieces and nephews go clean the place. But then I realized how important the review system is with Airbnb. And I realized, listen, I need some professionals, right? So my sole purpose during that transition period was to create a team of cleaners. And now we have managers for both Broward and Palm Beach. But just to create a team that's going to help me or be my eyes and ears and understand how to actually clean a property, because you just can't hire someone, hey, I need a cleaner, go clean this. Because the average person that cleans an average house they don't follow the same protocols that you would need in an Airbnb, right? So I did that. I found a team. We trained the team on how to set it up. And I'll do a shout out to them. Is at Dragonfly Cleaning Company. There by far Paula and Dea, which is the 2 owners of the company, who then now are part of me, that we took over that. Were a godsend, because I was like, I knew nothing about the cleaning business, but now I know a lot about the cleaning business. This is why I participated in that section on it. But when we first started was that, let's create a team first. Once we had the team, with their help, I started creating a system. So in case something happened between me and this group, that I can just get another group in place and just hand them the manual and say, just follow this, right? So that's what we ended up doing. And we ended up, which not only did that help us become more profitable, because there is a way to make money on the extra services with Airbnb, but that also helped us become more profitable, but more importantly, more efficient, because turnaround time is critical in Airbnb, right? Our checkout times are 11 and check-in is at 3. So we only have between 11 and 3 to clean the property. And if you don't have an efficient team, you're going to run into trouble. So we did that. We were able to standardize the cleaning, so it makes it really easy, whoever cleans it, right? And makes it really efficient, so you become more profitable.
Yeah, I imagine like it's the same in like, residential resale, where the only way that I'm able to do so many transactions is by having a team around me that allows it to be as efficient as possible. Right. It's kind of like you're saying, what it made me think about when you said turnaround time is like tables in a restaurant. It's essentially the same dynamic. Like, how can I turn that table around as fast as possible? And you had to create a system. And I imagine you utilize technology and things of that nature. And there's a human component that allows you to be able to turn those around, because I know that first impression is really important. When they walk into the property, it's got to smell right. It's got to be clean. It's got to be all that stuff, right?
Extremely important, extremely important. And that's what separates us from a lot of other mom and pops, a lot of people that start in the business, is that they don't realize, because everything you learn through experience, right? And when you're starting out in anything, you can read all the books you want, right? That's theory. But until you put into practice, you really don't really fully understand the magnitude of certain things in the systems. Like I can go on forever because I love the topic, but like even setting up your listing, how critical that initial setup is, right? What keywords you need to put in there to increase the SEO of your listing, how to maximize the views on your listings to get a higher occupancy rate. It's a lot that goes into it. And I don't know if I answered your question, but if someone that wants to go into it, there's two ways to do it. You can do all the work yourself, or you can hire a company like mine. Here's the difference, right? If you're looking, I put it this way: do you want a job or do you want a passive investment, right? If you want the job, do it all yourself, right? If you want a passive investment, give it to a management company. All you do is sit back and let the management company does it all, and you collect your check at the end of the month, right? So it just depends on what you want to do within your investment portfolio. Are you looking for another job, or are you looking for something passive?
That's right. And I love what you're doing, because essentially what you did is you figured this out. You figured out how to make a chocolate cake, and you're actually doing it. So you own, a lot of properties that you do Airbnb with, and then you build a team to service your own properties. And that same team and the same systems and the same processes and the same procedures, like all of that stuff, basically when somebody would hire you to manage that for them, they're getting access to all of that. And they just sit back and whatever, like you figured it out already. They could try to go, figure it out themselves, but you already figured it out. So you'll take them for like plugging them into your system, but they don't have to do anything. And in that way, it becomes much, much, much more passive, right?
Correct. And just to go over some quick numbers, right? So the average vacation rental, if you buy right, your ROI is going to be anywhere between 15 and 21%, right? So the difference will be, if you hire a property manager, he's only going to cut into maybe 2 or 3% of that percentage. So I tell people all the time, is it worth it? Depends on, how much is it worth your time? How much do you make per hour doing something else in your own profession, right? Combined to pay me the difference in your ROI. At the end of the day, you're only talking about pennies on the dollar, right? And your property's hands off, right? You don't have to worry about anything on the property. So we take care of everything from A through Z. So it just depends on, like I said, what type of participation you want in that investment.
Makes sense to me. And then here's my next question to you is with that being the case, I'm also imagining, just like in the real estate game, it's moving towards kind of volume, right? Where you have these super teams that are doing lots and lots of transactions. I'm imagining on your platform or on these various different platforms, whether it's Airbnb or VRBO or whatever, that the same thing is happening, where I would propose probably a small percentage of the operators have these little mini empires with 30, 40, 50, 100 doors, 200 doors, and they have it down, it's systematized, it's a legitimate kind of business, and you have these little mom and pops doing like 1 or 2, and I'm imagining as time progresses, you'll see more and more of that, where like 1% of the operators on the platform will do like 90% of all the transactions.
100%, and that is more evident today than it was prior to COVID.
Yep.
That's where I see the future of vacation rentals going. I mean, just think about it. Marriott got into the vacation rental market, right? Marriott is a huge company, right? You have Turnkey, which if you're not familiar with Turnkey got into the vacation rental market. These are big companies, right, that are going to be controlling almost all, if not all, of the vacation rental markets, with the exception of the properties where you're only renting out a room, right? If you're going to house hack your house, but that's the only area in which you're not going to see a management company. But so I'll give you, for example, when in prior to I would say 2016 and earlier, a lot of the Airbnb market were people just renting out a room. You know, you had very few single-family homes, very few entire apartments to rent. Probably 2014, 15, 16, it flipped. It exploded because people realized, shoot, you can make some money, right? You can rent the entire house out and make a lot of money versus just renting out a room, right? So, and I see that in the future. I see going forward, like, I'll give you a prime example. Miami, and I forget the building. There's 100% dedicated buildings being built just for vacation rentals.
Specifically for vacation rentals.
Specifically, there's 2 companies in Miami right now.
And then I'm curious, is what they'll do is where like they'll manage it, and you could buy like a unit in the building. They take a rip, and you'll get like, you know, whatever, right?
Yes. And that's the vehicle that, or the area that I'm trying to get into. Like I have in West Palm Beach. I have a 6-unit apartment building. The whole apartment building is, but now I own it. I don't manage it. That apartment building is all vacation rentals, right? You're starting to see people buying up or building these large complexes, just vacation rentals, right? And then you can either own it all yourself, or you can, like you said, sell each individual unit for that specific person, that purpose. And that's what that guy did in Miami. And I forget the name. It starts with an M, but an entire building. I think the building has 325 units.
Wow, that is wild. And it makes sense to me because, you know, nothing breeds kind of competition like profits.
Yep.
First, because I know the founders, they started it as like, you know, just to share a room. And that's for a while. And then people started to realize, you know, there's money here. And then then you get this consolidation. And then what you end up with is a handful of players who are business minded, technology savvy. They understand the bridge between the 2 worlds, which is the digital world and the physical world, right? They're good managers. They can operate systems so they can build these little mini empires.
Correct.
More and more, like you'll see a consolidation where a handful of operators will do the majority of the business. And then what's interesting is at some point, and this is my question to you, so 5 to 10 years from now, I'm imagining that what somebody can do is they can build a large portfolio like that and then sell it.
Yes.
5 to 10 years from now, what are you thinking? Is that something you're thinking like down the road where you're building out this portfolio that at some point when you're ready to, you know, I know you love to travel, just travel all the time, and that'll be it, that you'll want to sell the portfolio?
100%. I mean that, interesting point on that. My thought process has always been to build something so that I can sell it later on. The interesting dynamics with that is that when I started building my business with the sole purpose to sell it, I became extremely profitable, and my business doubled, tripled. You know, probably now I think I 6x my business, because what ends up happening, it makes you disciplined, right? You have to create all the systems. Once you create the systems and have everything in place, you also have to be very meticulous with your books. Because at some point, when you decide to sell, somebody's going to look at those books, right? They want to see what you've done. And they want to know, can they step into your shoes? If you're the one calling the shots and you're the one doing everything, you don't have a sellable business.
No. Right? And you know what it makes me think about is Warren Buffett had a saying one time. He's like, you want to build a business so that way one day a dummy can run it, because one day a dummy will.
Yes. I love it. I know. Yeah. So that's it. And like I said, I think even if you don't plan on selling anytime soon, you should still create the systems, because here's the thing, right? And I think these are 2 types of entrepreneurs, right? You have a person that'll build a business, but it's like saying, oh, let me put it this way. They're going to build a job, right? When a person builds a business it's all about that individual, all they did was create a job, a high-paying job nonetheless, but they created a job.
Yep.
Versus what I'm doing is I'm creating a business as from an entrepreneur perspective that I'm hands off. Like I think I mentioned this in a prior call with you. 2019 was what I was the best year of my life, right? It was my eye-opening year in which I realized, yes, this is how you run a business. I had so much free time that I spent probably a total of 7 months out of the country. I was in South America, I was in Europe. I spent a lot of time out of the country. And even when I was here in New York, Atlanta, I was visiting family, I had the freedom, right? And the ability to just go wherever I wanted to go. And my business not only grew, it flourished. Right? Without me, right? We're still doing great, phenomenal, right? Obviously, COVID kind of put the brakes on it, but I look at that as a positive because it allowed me to look at other avenues. Prior to COVID, I was never on social media, right? Social media was an afterthought for me. Now, because of COVID, I'm like, I got all this time, and I'm, especially when it first started, you didn't want to leave your house. I had all this time, and what I did is I did a couple of things. Number one, I pivoted my business to be profitable during COVID. We can touch on that if you want, but it also allowed me to figure out how else can I monetize my business and how can I continue to market that while creating another revenue stream, right? Which is what I did. I just sat down and I'm like, oh, okay. So it allowed me to grow my business even more and figure out other ways to profit from my knowledge.
That's right. Yeah, we were having a conversation about that prior to kind of jumping on, where I see that as a very big opportunity to monetize, everything that you know. And it's interesting because what you were saying about the differences in entrepreneurs, I went to a business mastery with Tony Robbins. And one of the things I learned there is he said there's 3 types of people in business. One is the artist. And the artist is somebody who has a particular skill that they're very good at. And most businesses are actually started by artists. But the problem with artists is that they're usually not good at like time management and like systems and like all that other stuff, right? The second type of person is the manager. And the manager is super good at systems, processes, procedures, right? So the idea would be is, let's say, when Taylor Swift and when she's booking a venue, like she's not collecting the money at the gate. She's not even booking the thing. Like she just shows up and does her thing, right? So she has a manager who does that for her, right? And then the third person is the entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur is the one who has an insatiable appetite for risk. They're the ones who are willing to push in, right? And like, some people don't, like, I feel like entrepreneurship is not something you can learn in a book. I think it's either built into you or it's not. And but you need all 3 in order to do something really big.
Yeah.
Because the entrepreneur is going to want to be like, hey, let's take some risks, let's go, right? And the artist is like, I don't know about that, right? And the manager is like overseeing systems and processes. So like, it sounds as though you've surrounded yourself with really good managers.
Correct.
Right? You have that entrepreneurial kind of bent. And for that reason, that's why you're seeing, and you've also pivoted very quickly, right? You pivoted when something changed. You didn't just sit back. You made some adjustments from going focused on people from out of the country coming in to just local, which was a super smart pivot. People wanting to come down to Florida, right, during a time of uncertainty or if they were locked in their house. And then also kind of ascending, right? So they're already there. So how do we, like, maybe we clean it more than once and we get more money that way, or maybe we do pets and we get more money that way. So you made a very quick pivot that allowed you to not just survive, but really thrive.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. Which is awesome, brother. So listen, man, so anything else that you would want people to know about short-term rentals that you think, like, if you were going to give them like 1 or 2 things for them to know, what would you want them to know?
Well, I touched on it already, but I'm going to expand on one aspect that I don't think I mentioned enough, and is on that pivot, right? When you're in the vacation rental world, and it depends on your market, right? It depends on where you're at because it's different. Each area is different. Is you need to really study the market. You really need to see, like, prime example was COVID, right? A lot of people that got stuck were people that didn't react quickly enough. Right? As you mentioned, right? A lot of my clients at the time were from Europe. The moment the president banned people from Europe, I refocused on who my target audience was, and I went to local people, right? Who wants to leave, if they're living in an apartment, get out of your apartment. Go spend a weekend in one of my houses in a pool, right? If you are working remotely, leave your apartment from New York City. Come down here, work remotely in a bigger house with a pool, right? Jacuzzi, sit down, enjoy, where you can still work and you're not stuck. So learning to pivot and do it quickly, extremely important in this especially in this world today of uncertainty, right? You want to be able to pivot quickly. And specifically to the vacation rental market, really understand what is it that you want to do. If you want to do it all yourself, understand that it's work, right? You're managing guests. You have to do the turnover. There's a lot of stuff that comes into play that you have to do. Or do you want to be a passive investor? So those are two things that we already touched upon, but I think are important. And I can't think of anything else that I can add to it right now.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome, brother. Listen, I think people are going to get tremendous value from our time together. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share. So if people want to find you, if they want to connect with you, how can they find you?
they can find me on Instagram, Fernando_Premium Services, or on YouTube at PMI Premium Services. And my website is Premium Services, www.pmipremiumservices.com.
Awesome, man. So if you're interested at all in that space, Fernando is your guy to talk to. So again, brother, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for taking the time, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right, buddy. My honor. It was my honor, my pleasure to be on with you, buddy.
For sure.
Have a good one.
You too.